Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast is the Laces Out podcast, the NFL podcast that I'm sure somebody loves it. I know you guys love it. Come on. We've got a special guest this week. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have lots of guests. Sometimes we have one guest. This week we have a special guest, and if you're a fan of the Formula One, you might recognise our special guest. Before we get started, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Drop reviews where you can drop reviews and share the podcast around. If you've got an NFL fan in your life, send them this podcast. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast. Laces Out.
Recording in progress.
My word. She's not wrong. Maybe she is wrong. Let me check. No, she is correct. Recording is in progress. Obviously, you know, in recent times that wasn't the case, and there was a whole audio disaster. But touch, we've passed that. All stuff that probably wasn't needed right at the start of this podcast. It's the NFL podcast, Laces Out. I am here. Probably no surprises with that one. My glamorous co-host, Mr. Paul Williams, is here. How are you, sir?
Good evening, all. Yes, very well. All good at this end, which will become apparent when we go through last week's breakdown of the games, but no spoilers.
Well, and joining us now here at the CookieCast podcast production studios, we like to mix, match, and just generally cross-pollination is my favourite terminology. So I like to reach out to the wrestling podcast, see if they've got any hosts lying around, get the football guys involved. But very rarely do we get our almost sister podcast involved, the Formula One podcast. So the, dare I say, number one host of the number one Yorkshire-based Formula One
People
podcast.
argue that.
When Tony's not available, you go to the next best thing, and that is Mr. Mark Wilkin. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Evening, everybody. Thanks for having me.
An absolute pleasure to have you here, talking a different sport.
I know.
If I'm honest, big shout out to Tony and James, because they've been on the phone. They're like, Andy, mate, you got to get Mark on a podcast. He's climbing the walls. He can't do it. He just keeps saying, "Is it time yet? Is it time?" So there we go.
I'm just recording myself at home. I've got nothing else to do on a Tuesday night.
We've heard. There are videos circulating on the internet. If you look hard enough, you can find them. So there we go. Now then, it's playoff football, people. It's playoff football. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which sometimes I am, we've just had wild card super wild card weekend. Super. Was it super? There's only one way to find out, and that's by handing over to my glamorous co-host to really get into the games this week, because there's not as many as there have been in previous weeks. So, Paul, how super was Super Wildcard Weekend? Go.
Well, of the 6 games, four were settled by one score. So you could argue somewhat super. I would say that the super element was not the bread, if you were, of the 6 games, as the weekend started with a bit of a blowout and ended with a bit of a blowout. But the filling in between, that could have been described as super, because those were your 4 closer games that turned out to be all settled with one score. So, like I said, the first game didn't start off too super from from a sort of a neutral perspective, as it were, but from a person who may or may not be on this podcast, it started from a positive perspective, didn't it, Mark?
The first half wasn't. I thought
no, that is true. Actually,
no,
the first half wasn't great.
No, but after half time, then it was a very super game.
It certainly was. So that was the Seattle Seahawks traveling to the San Francisco 49ers, and as you may have ascertained from that, San Francisco 49ers were successful and move on to the divisional round. Then next up, we had the the San Diego Chargers. Jesus Christ. The podcast has just gone back in time by 5 years. The Los Angeles Chargers travelled to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. I think last week in the podcast we said that it was either going to be this game or the Giants-Vikings game. Giants-Vikings game was probably going to be the closest and the one that was the most difficult to call. And it certainly lived up to the billing. The Chargers were 27-0 up at one point, thanks in no small part to 4 interceptions thrown by Trevor Lawrence in his first playoff appearance. Not the best from old T-Law, but as they have done before this season, they managed to rally round and in the second half brought it back and actually won the game 31-30. Now, I don't know if it was a case of the Jaguars playing well or the Chargers playing poorly in the second half. Possibly a little bit of both, if we're being honest. But at the end of the day, when the clock hit triple zeros, it was the Jags that were in the lead, and they're the ones that progress. I tried my best to watch this game, but it was very, very late on Saturday evening, and I was falling asleep, not going to lie, on several occasions. I've not watched it back yet, but the bits that I did see, it just looked as if it was the stereotypical game of two halves. Jags terrible in the first half, and then just flicked a switch in the second half, and Lawrence was just on it.
I believe that we discussed this game a little bit more at length on last week's podcast and said very much you kind of expected the Chargers to walk away from this with the win, but at no point in time should you count the Jags out. The Jags have been a very interesting team to watch this season. I mean, in previous seasons, they've been an absolute train wreck. But I said at the time, having seen them play live, they are very much a different beast this season. And I don't want to be the guy that says, and they proved it at the weekend. It was 1 point deciding it, but ultimately that 1 point was them walking away with a win.
I think we said it at Wembley, Andy. I think the difference, the second half, was that Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
Class. It was
absolute
class at Wembley.
Cornerstone of that team.
And he turned it up, and I think the Jags stopped Eckler, and then, like I say, second half, Etienne just absolutely annihilated him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where I think if you're a Chargers fan or if you're in the Chargers back office, you're certainly having words with Brandon Staley and saying we didn't need to play the starters last week. Mike Williams getting injured in that game really kind of sort of affected where we could go with the ball. You kind of need to take some accountability for that.
Yeah.
I think not to date the podcast, but I do believe the offensive coordinator of the Chargers has been let go.
Indeed.
Today. So that's what happens. Unfortunately, you pay the price for subpar nature. Unfortunately, but that is what it is. So Jags move on. The next game saw the Miami Dolphins travel to the Buffalo Bills. This one was a lot closer than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. To be honest with you, the Bills were 17-0 up, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
And the Dolphins almost wiped that out by half time.
Yeah.
Which was crazy.
Yeah, it was bonkers.
But second half, the Dolphins actually took the lead, and then the Bills just managed to sort of get back on top and then hold out until the end. But yeah, another off-par showing from Josh Allen for me. Just didn't really look as if he was all that comfortable throughout the game. Threw a couple of interceptions.
I know from having a brief conversation with Mark earlier, I know we'll probably get into this when we discuss this week's game for the Bills. But yeah, I text our little podcast group a little bit before the end of the game, and I was like, I got that worried about the Bills. And the fact that I was like, they could go out now, that I had to put a bet on the Dolphins to win. Because I don't know if everybody's aware, but I am cursed when it comes to putting money on things. So I was like, I've got a great idea. I'm gonna secure a Bills win by betting on the Dolphins to win. And I think within 30 seconds of placing that bet, everything had changed. And yes, the Bills did in fact secure the win. Further proof that I cannot win money betting on sporting events.
Absolutely not. So, Bills progress to the divisional round. Next up was the other game that a lot of people were saying was a bit of a 50-50 shot, where the New York Giants took on the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, the Vikings were the number 3 seed and had the home advantage. Didn't really play out that way for them. They certainly started off well, scoring a touchdown on their opening drive, but they just couldn't really hang with the Giants in the first half. The Giants kind of ran the show first half, and then the Vikings just never really could get back into the game. And then what everyone's saying is the fact that with the last play, 4th and 8. Kirk Cousins decides to throw the ball underneath, not past the numbers, and then they're short of the line to gain by a good 5 yards and turn the ball over on downs when they've got no way of stopping the clock.
Yeah.
Questionable decisions.
Yeah.
I think, long-time listeners and viewers will be in no way surprised to know my thoughts on the whole Kirk Cousins situation. But
There'll be no way surprised that the first thing I said to you Monday morning was, how happy are you the Vikings have gone?
So it was the situation with the Vikings was perfectly summed up to me in the fact that everyone was going on about the fact that they were really good in close games, and they'd won. So they'd played 11 games that were settled by one score or less, and they'd won all 11. The first time it actually matters, when they play a game that's sort of settled by one score, they choke. It's not coincidence.
I thought it was nice that Kirk Cousins did his own little tribute to Damar Hamlin and threw it for 3 yards. I just thought that was such a big thing for him to.
He knew that 3 was obviously a very special number.
And rather than win the game, he wanted to just honour Damar Hamlin instead.
He's bigger than football. He's bigger than football, Kirk Cousins.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, what a guy.
Certainly is. And like I said to a couple of our friends, I just went with fully guaranteed to never win the Super Bowl. So the New York Giants move on to the divisional round. The Minnesota Vikings, sadly, it's another season without a Super Bowl for the Scholars. Now we move to the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Now this one was kind of sort of on the it was almost settled as soon as Lamar Jackson said he wasn't really going to play.
Absolutely.
But didn't end up turning out that way. The Ravens were much more competitive in this than I thought they should have been, really. Tyler Huntley didn't play a terrible game at all.
Nope.
And arguably, if they had a little bit of luck at the end, they could have forced overtime. So, Bengals didn't look as assured as they normally do.
No.
Or certainly had done the week before against the Bengals, and probably should have had this one put to bed much sooner than they eventually did. But yeah, a bit of a strange one, that one. It was a bit similar to the Bills game in that I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a blowout home victory, and it didn't. And it certainly didn't pan out that way. Obviously, they did get the win, but not as comprehensively as you would have thought at first. But
do you think something's going on with the Ravens? Because obviously Lamar Jackson declared himself that he was injured. He then didn't travel with a team, and then his best mate Tyler Huntley was quarterback. He didn't go support him, didn't support his teammates, and then the running back come out and said, "Oh, if you'd handed me the ball, I'd have got it in." They all seem to be. I
saw something round about the time or just after Lamar Jackson announced that he wasn't, he was still injured. I'd seen something that was saying that apparently Lamar Jackson's injury is being played down. I imagine that's for any prospective teams that might want to be interested. They don't want to be looking at a quarterback who's severely injured versus a quarterback that's just a little bit injured going into the off-season. So there's a possibility that maybe he wasn't in a position to travel. I don't know if any of that is in fact true. At the end of the day, you get 4 weeks from the end of the season and everybody starts talking about Tom Brady retiring, when at the same time he does a press conference and says he has absolutely no intention of retiring anytime soon. We will come on to Tom Brady, I believe, very shortly, and some of the stuff that's been going around about Tom Brady in the last few days is just his rumoured new team is hilarious.
In what way?
Because in a lot of ways it makes a lot of sense. Yet Tom Brady in green and white seems a little
green and white.
Really?
Have you not seen the mocked up picture of him in the uniform? I won't be able to find it now.
See, I thought it was nailed on that he was off to the Raiders.
Yeah, I did.
That's the second team that has been
because of the McDaniels links and the fact that it's, I'm assuming, a tax haven, so he wouldn't have to pay any tax, any state tax or that. But who knows? But yes, so the Bengals do move on, and as Andy has mentioned, speaking of Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, they took on the Dallas Cowboys in the final game of Super Wildcard Weekend. It was the Monday Night Football, and for the first 10 minutes or so of the game, it was a bit of a punt fest, as neither team's offense could get anything going. I believe it was potentially six straight 3-and-outs across the board.
Yep.
Until the Dallas Cowboys finally managed to get some offense going. Scored a touchdown. Missed the extra point. 3-and-out from the Buccaneers, it wasn't a 3-and-out from the Buccaneers. Sorry, the Buccaneers went on the drive, and Tom Brady threw his first ever red zone interception as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. To which oh dear,
wow,
oh dear.
That's how you pissed Bill Belichick off.
Oh, part of me does wonder if he would do that just for that reason.
Yeah.
To really stick it to Belichick. So Tom Brady threw his first ever red zone interception as a Buck. The Cowboys returned it. No, they didn't return it for a touchdown, but they obviously returned the possession and then turned that into a touchdown. Missed the extra point. They then scored another touchdown and missed the extra point. You can kind of see where this pattern's going. Yes, 4 missed extra points from kicker Brett Maher in this game, and it was mentioned during the coverage. I wonder if the Dallas Cowboys will be looking for a new kicker come Tuesday morning.
So he may have missed 4 of his extra points. In his last 5, how many has he missed? That's right, because he's also missed one in last week's game. So he's actually missed his last 5. And I saw something earlier today that was like, you know, obviously you've got this pool of NFL kickers, but surely there are out there in the wider circle, there are people who day in, day out can drill a ball down the centre of those sticks. So why is it that you've got a high volume of kickers that just can't do the one and only job that they have to do? And I know the what is it, the couch quarterback system of I could have made that, and then when people are put on the spot, they absolutely couldn't. But there are also a lot of people out there that could make that. So why aren't they doing that job? And the guy who can't apparently do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's easy. It's easy to say, like you say, armchair quarterbacking. You're not on the pitch. You're not in the situation. You don't know what the weather's like. You don't know what the atmosphere is doing to you and stuff like that. You could see with his first two that he pushed them wide right. So for his third attempt, obviously he was like, well, if I know I'm pushing them right, I need to correct it to the left. And obviously missed that one left. I don't know where he missed the fourth one. He did eventually get one through because they did score a fifth touchdown, and he did manage to get an extra point after it. So he did manage to get himself on the board. But I'd be very surprised if they don't at least bring in an alternative or have a look to see if there's an alternative that they might be able to bring through. As obviously, shock horror, the Cowboys held on to win the game, so we'll move on to the next round to play the San Francisco 49ers. If they get into a position where they're scoring touchdowns against the 49ers, they can't afford to be missing point afters because the 49ers aren't exactly the Bucs and will punish them for those misses. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting situation to watch between now and next Sunday when that game starts. So, 6 games, all done. Obviously, last week on the show we did some predictions. It was myself, Andy, Amy, and Leanne provided predictions from that perspective. So, in 4th place, with sadly only 2 of 6 picks correct, it is the stats mistress herself, Leanne Davies, ladies and gentlemen. She only got the Bills and the Bengals correct. She was let down by the other 4 teams.
Wow.
Disappointing. In joint 2nd place, or joint 3rd place, depending on which way your sort of glass is half full / empty, with 3 out of 6 picks correct, it is Miss Amy Brinton providing her stellar knowledge to the podcast again, and the leader of the podcast network right there in his cap, Mr. Andrew Cook. Andy was let down by the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Buccaneers, whereas Amy was let down by the Seahawks, the Vikings, and the Ravens. So, obviously that means I won the week. How much did I win the week by? Get your applause out, ladies and gentlemen. With a full 6 out of 6 picks correct. That's right. I have just given myself the 1 point, because I look back over the book and we had a similar situation where Stuart picked all 6 of the wildcard games last season. So well played to Mr. Woodmansey last year when he did the same, and I only gave him a point. So yes, so I've reset the scores from the regular season. So it's currently 1-0-0 to myself, and then obviously yourself and the guest. Side bet wise, Andy had taken. Oh, sorry. Well, I'll give the scores that we went into the week on. So Andy went into the week on 47 points, and I went into the week on 48 points. We didn't say 50, well, that would be incorrect. So there's only 1 point in it. So Andy had taken the Bills, correct, the Bengals, correct, and the Chargers, sadly. So only gets himself 2 points there to move himself to 49. Obviously, with me picking all 6 games correctly, I couldn't possibly lose on this one. So I had the 49ers, Giants, and Cowboys. So I get myself 3 points and move on to 51 on the side bet. Other than the wild card predictions, From a season-long predictions perspective, 4 players did get eliminated with their pick of the Bucks to make the Super Bowl. That was Andy, Stu, and Rob. They did, however, have the Bills to make the game, so they are still in the running. Mark's pick of the Chiefs versus the Eagles is very much still in play, as obviously they are the number 1 seeds, and they come into the mix in the divisional round weekend. So, just myself, Andy, Stu, and Rob that can't get their perfect Super Bowl, just the Bills left in play on that side. I believe, Mr. Cook, we have some stats to round out week 19, as it were, technically.
So, a couple of things about the stats. Number 1 is with lesser games, with fewer games, comes less stats. So there are only 7 stats this week, which I've divided between these gentlemen here. The other thing is, because she does it out of the goodness of her heart, I always like to give the stats mistress a mention. 52 minutes after the stats hit the internet, they were in my mailbox. Now, if that's not on the bobby, I don't know what is. So, big thanks to the stats mistress. So, of the 7 stats, we'll start them off like this. This is the NFL wildcard round stats. Credit goes to Nate Davis of USA Today, and like I said, the stats mistress. Stat number 1 of this week is the average margin of victory in a game during the 2022 regular season was 9.7 points, the league's lowest in 90 years. But things were even tighter at the outset of the playoffs. The first 5 games decided by an average of just 7.2 points. Number 2, 7 of the teams that were in action on Saturday and Sunday: the Baltimore Ravens, Jacksonville Jaguars, Los Angeles Chargers, Miami Dolphins, Minnesota Vikings, New York Giants, and Seattle, didn't qualify for the postseason last year. Of that group, only the Jags and the G-Men advanced. Paul?
So, I will continue on that theme of teams that have made it after not making it the season before. This was the first time in 23 years that all of the 3 Florida-based teams, the Jags, the Finns, and the Buccaneers, all made it into the playoffs in any way, shape, or form. Secondly, I have that Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen certainly didn't submit his greatest playoff performance in Sunday's 34-31 escape from the Dolphins. But despite 3 turnovers, he did join Matt Ryan as the only player with at least 300 passing yards and 3 touchdown passes in 3 straight postseason games. And finally, for me, in 12 games, including Saturday's win this season with San Francisco, running back Christian McCaffrey has 1,346 yards from and 11 touchdowns from scrimmage. What a trade that has turned out to be.
Amazing.
Yep.
Mark, take us home.
So, I've got the Jags became the first team ever to win a playoff game the season after they owned the NFL's worst record. Their 2021 edition, mostly coached by Urban Meyer, finished 3-14. Urban Meyer, wow. That's a name. My second stat, teams playing on wildcard weekend, or Super Wildcard weekend, sorry, have won the Super Bowl 11 times. 7 of those clubs true wildcards. A year ago, both the Bengals and Rams advanced from the wildcard round to Super Bowl 56. The season prior, the Buccaneers took the wildcard path, 3 road playoff wins to victory in Super Bowl 55.
And there we go. Short and sweet on the stats because less games to talk about. So, we'll have some picks to do. And the side bet's just going to get even juicier at this point.
Well, side bet reduces to only 2 games each, sadly. So, yeah, super tasty. We may even potentially have to avoid the ABBA selection method and just go for a straight up ABAB picks to make it fair. But we'll cover that when we cover it, Mr. Cook. So,
Indeed.
I believe before we jump into the divisional round picks, I believe we may need to take a small break to just compose, refresh, reinvigorate ourselves, and then we'll jump straight into it.
Absolutely. We'll be back in 1 sec and we'll get at it. 2 ticks.
Recording in progress.
And just like that, they were back, even though they've moved around, certainly on my screen anyway. So, there's some juicy games. I'll say I was gushing last week that although the end of the regular season is a very sad time for me personally, the games that you get from postseason, I get the vapours. It's a delicious time to be a fan watching hardcore playoff football. Obviously, having to sit through live American adverts is like having your teeth pulled with a pneumatic drill. But other than that, it's a great time to be alive. So, Paul.
With that comment, I've got to a point now where I want to start making a tally of the amount of times I've seen a particular advert, because I've lost count of the amount of times that either a Verizon advert comes up or an advert for Burger King's $5 meal pack, or
I thought you was going to say how many times you'd seen the trailer for Rihanna's Super Bowl appearance.
Oh yes, I forgot about that as well. Yes. Hosted by Apple Music, no less. So,
not Pepsi anymore.
Apple Music.
Apple Music.
So, to avoid Mr. Cook wanting to put that particular weapon to his mouth, we start with the Jacksonville Jaguars travelling to the Kansas City Chiefs to, dare I suggest, make up the numbers at this point? I mean, is it too easy to say that, or?
Hi, is that the Kansas City Chiefs? Yeah, I'm afraid we can't come into work today because we're all really unwell, and please don't. The weird thing about this is that having seen the Jags up to this point of the season and seeing them last week, I'm now like, is there a universe out there where the Jags win this game and advance?
Listen, we're saying it as if it's, an absolute certainty that the Chiefs will win.
I don't think anything's certain.
No? The Jags have a chance, of course they do, because, it's a game at the end of the day, and you don't know how Patrick Mahomes is going to play. We've got a pretty good idea of how he's going to play, and obviously the stats are all there in the 4 seasons that he's been a starter. He has made the AFC Championship game every season, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he will be back there again the week after this.
It's that thing, isn't it? I imagine, because there was a lot of people at the time when the contract, while the ink was drying on that contract, were like, is he really worth $500 million? And then X amount of time later, they're like, yeah, I think we're good on this one. I think we're covered here.
The thing that makes it even more ridiculous now is the fact that they only gave him $500 million, and then you consider that Deshaun Watson goes and gets like $250 million from the Cleveland Browns. And
Fully guaranteed
as well. Absolutely crazy. So surprise, we've all taken the Chiefs. I don't think it's a big shock. You would probably say it's the safest bet of the 4 games. The Chiefs will undoubtedly be the heavy favourite. I would imagine potentially double point favourites.
When a team pull out a ring the roses before a play, They can't lose. They just cannot lose.
I am still, that still plays on a loop going through my mind every day. I'm just like, who does that?
The fact that it got pulled back, so obviously you missed out, from a fantasy perspective, you missed out on the Patrick Mahomes 4 points for the touchdown pass. But we won't go into the fact that I lost the fantasy final by 4 points. It's fine.
Sky Bet are giving Kansas City 2-9 odds versus 7-2 Jacksonville Jaguars.
It's one of the more one-sided games you'll see. I'd be surprised if the handicap was under 11.5 points, to be honest with you. So we'll move on to the next game, which should also be taking place on technically Sunday over here, but it will be Saturday in the States. So we've got the New York Giants taking on the 1 seed Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we have all taken the Eagles in this one, but I did have a conversation with a friend of mine who is a Steelers fan, and we both came to the conclusion they would probably have much preferred the... well, it wouldn't have been the Vikings they would have played, because they would have ended up playing the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't think the Eagles are going to be... like I said, we have all picked the Eagles. I don't think this one's going to be that straightforward, given how the Giants played against the Vikings in the last round. It'll just be a case of whether that week off has allowed the Eagles to get everyone that they needed rested and then backfiring.
Do we know the status of Jalen Hurts?
I think he's pretty good to go. I think he said that he was probably a little bit more banged up than he wanted to be to play against the Giants in week 18. But because the Giants were going to be resting all their starters because they knew they couldn't do anything, I think it was looked at as a bit of a no risk, because he wasn't going to have, Kayvon Thibodeau flying at him at high speeds trying to sort of knock him out and stuff like that. So I think he's good. I think he's good to go, or as close to 100% as he possibly can be.
My mate's a Giants fan at work, and he also plays American football in this country. And he said he thinks the Giants will go after Hurts because he's not fully fit, and if they do, he's in trouble because the Eagles cannot play without him. Obviously, 95% fit. Because he uses his legs a lot, doesn't he, Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, he gets a lot of yards.
It could be very close, very close. It all depends, like you say, if they're hard in the injury or if he is, in fact, they've just rested him.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I keep coming back to it. I have picked the Eagles. I do think the Eagles will win. I think we'll have too much for them, and I think that week off will make all the difference. But I wouldn't be surprised if we sat here in a week's time saying the Giants are preparing for their first NFC Championship game in however many years or whatever, because they just play that sort of football where if they just they can hand the ball off to Saquon, they can keep the ball with Daniel Jones, and you know they're going to get the yards. And so Daniel Jones has just stepped up this season. He just seems to be able to burst through tackles.
I love that fake handoff.
I saw something where someone said if Patrick Mahomes had done this play, people would be going absolutely wild for it and stuff like that. And it's the Messi principle in football. If just a regular player sort of scores one from the edge of his own box or something like that, people say if Messi scores that goal, it gets mentioned for the rest of the time. But because it was scored by Arthur Jones for Grimsby against Carlisle, it'll never get a look in again and stuff like that. I think it's a similar principle for Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm. I think their coach, is it Brian Daboll, deserves massive respect this season. Because I don't think they've made many changes to the roster, have they?
No, not really. No. I mean, they had a pretty good draft. Obviously, they got Thibodeau, and he's been a big difference maker on the defense. But yeah, he's pretty much working with what they had there before, minus a couple of different additions and stuff like that, or plus a couple of different additions. But yeah, to say where they've come from last season to the team they are now. Obviously, Jones was in the last year of his deal, there's no guarantee that they'll sort of like give him an extended contract or anything like that. But you imagine if they're able to, they might franchise tag him or something like that. See what they've got next season to see if they can like run it back and stuff. But yeah, I think of the 4 games, I'd say it's up there as one of the sort of top 2. And then I looked at what the other 2 are that we've still got to discuss, and maybe not. But I'll certainly be watching it with a little bit more gusto than the game before, which could be done by half time, let's put it that way. So, speaking of the other 2 games, it moves us to the game that we should have had in week 17, but obviously extenuating circumstances dictated that wasn't going to be able to be played. So it's not in Cincinnati. This time it does take place in Buffalo, and it is the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Buffalo Bills. Now, I believe every single one of us is probably in exactly the same position here. We've said we think the Bills will win, but in our heads we're like, there's something about the Bengals that it's just, you can't really look past them too much at this particular point, and it's weird. I thought, like I say, I think that the way that they didn't take care of business as comfortably as you would have thought against the Ravens did make me think maybe the game being in Buffalo might count against them. Well, saying that, they went into Kansas City last year in the AFC Championship game and beat them there, didn't they? So they're obviously a team for the big occasion. They've arguably got the best receiving core in the whole of the league. I think it'll all boil down to how well Josh Allen plays for me.
So I know,
Sorry.
like Mark, you've already mentioned that although you've made a pick in this game, you're not comfortable. I'm in exactly the same position. I've made a pick. I don't even know if it's a head over heart situation. Seeing the Bills play at the weekend, I'm not going to lie, it didn't fill me with confidence moving forward. Now, as Paul mentioned before, the Bills are 50% of my Super Bowl pick. And to say that, to see them at the weekend, I was worried. Now, on the other side of the ball, we've got the Bengals. Bengals, the last couple of years, have been consistently one of the best teams. This game is tasty. And part of me thinks no matter which way it goes, you're going to get a good game. This is the quintessential, it's either going to be 3-7 final, or it's going to be 51-50. It's either going to be score for score for score for score for score. You're 6 minutes into the first quarter and it's 20-20 or something like that. Or it's going to be 4 and out, 4 and out, 4 and out, 4 and out for 3/4 of the time. It could be either of those versions. It's very unlikely that it's going to be this team's 30 points ahead of that team. As for which team is which in that scenario, yeah, I've had to go with the Bills. I don't feel comfortable with that choice, having seen them at the weekend, and knowing that the Bengals can get it done. That team is a monster. Weapons left, right, and centre. And then you've got Joe Burrow. The man is legit. So I've made. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think that's a good point you've made. You've raised there. Obviously, like the Bengals have got the "we've done this before" mentality, whereas the Bills obviously haven't been at the Super Bowl since 93, 94, maybe. And obviously they were in the postseason last season, got to that game with the Chiefs, and then it just obviously got away from them. But I don't know. I know. Obviously, it only panned out for 4 of the 6 teams in the wild card round, but home advantage matters so much when it comes to these games and stuff like that. And the Bills Mafia is obviously well known for a reason.
There is not a table in Buffalo. Say the stores in Buffalo this week will sell more tables than toilet roll. Honestly, and how many chickens will have to be sacrificed to provide the many wild wings that will be going on? Tables and wild wings is the only thing that's selling in Buffalo this week.
I think out of the 4 games, this one either goes to overtime or it's who's in possession with a minute to go. I think it's that game.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's low high, but so close.
I was literally just about to say that. They said it on the Giants-Vikings game. And they said it could just come down to whichever team possesses the ball last will win it. And I totally agree, Mark. I think that is literally how this one could go. It could just be total shootout. Whoever cracks first is the team that goes home. So that leads us on to our last game of the slot, and it is the Dallas Cowboys taking on Mark's San Francisco 49ers. Now, this is our first game where we've got a difference of opinion. So, Andy and Mark, no surprises, have taken the San Francisco 49ers. I'm taking the Cowboys on this one.
Do surprise me.
At home. I know they've got an unbelievably good defense. Purdy's not been tested yet, and I think if I was a Niners fan at this point, I'd have happily taken any team in the postseason apart from Dallas, because Dallas's defense is scary good.
But when you're backed by Paul Heyman, you've got nothing to lose. You've got nothing to lose. You are,
And you
called Brock. You are in some good company.
Listen, if it comes down to it, and Mr. Purdy is not able to perform, they do have the option of just tagging in Mr. Lesnar to take snaps under centre. So
absolutely,
there is always that, I suppose. I don't know. There's just something right. It's all been a bit too sort of fairy tale up to this point for me.
Yeah.
He's won all the starts he's had.
Yeah.
He's never really had, apart from the first half against the Seahawks, he's never really had like a tough time of it. And I think the Cowboys are gonna sort of play on that, and they're gonna be at him.
So
straight away,
you
Parsons is gonna try and get at him.
Yeah.
He's gonna try and ruffle his feathers, see how he feels when he's got like a huge man up in his face and stuff like that. And I reckon if they rattle him, he could unravel.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit it nailed on. The Cowboys' defense is scary. They are so good. Like, that defense is amazing. 49ers defense isn't anything to sniff at. And
no, and I was going to back that up with, I know the Niners defense is good. Very, very good. Probably best in the division. Or best in the league even. But I just think that Dak's been around for enough time to know how to play against certain systems.
But was he
in his locker?
Any good in that time, being one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL history?
Well, I'll tell you, he certainly played out of his skin against the Bucks on
Did
Monday
he?
Night, so.
He
was really good.
Shocking in the first half of that game. They couldn't move the ball more than a couple of yards. Dak Prescott is listening to the commentators, literally just like, oh, Dak Prescott. I was like, can you just slap it out of your mouth for 2 seconds and do some actual commentary? There are a couple of other players on that field, It's sickening to listen to because he is not a good quarterback. I don't care how you slice it. He has got an amazing defense, and as we know, defense wins games. I think Lady Luck favours Dak Prescott more than any kind of skill.
I'm not on the Brock Purdy bandwagon. I'm half on, half off. In the games he's played, he should have had at least 5 picks. and they've either been brought back. He's got lucky. However, I feel more confident with him under centre than Jimmy Garoppolo. And yet Dallas have got a great D. We've got a great D. Our D seems to take a bit of time to warm up at the minute. We've let some mediocre quarterbacks take us apart, like Raiders the other week. I just think Brock Purdy, the way he was at Ohio State, he's going to come good, and I trust him a lot more than Jimmy. And I honestly think he's been practicing against the 49ers D week in, week out. He'll be ready for it. And I agree with Andy, Dak Prescott is the most overrated guy since Kirk Cousins. He's terrible. He's absolutely garbage. Because he's got a star on his shirt, he's absolutely amazing.
Shockingly bad.
Yeah.
But a team that I would never want to face is the Dallas Cowboys, especially, and I use this phrase a lot, but especially this version of the Dallas Cowboys. The one thing that as a team they consistently do well is they put a monstrous defense out pretty much year in, year out. No matter what they've got going on offense, going on or not going on, wherever, that defense is like a brick wall. And then they've got not only that wall, they've also got players in the defense that will go after the ball, that will go after the quarterback, that are ready for the interception, they're ready for the picks. They're going to take that ball off you and run it for a touchdown. They, looking at the list of teams there, I wouldn't have too hard a time putting the Cowboys defense as number one of the teams that are left. Admittedly, the 49ers have been rated as number one through the season. So defense versus defense, if you were talking a Super Bowl kind of game, you'd be hard picked to say which of the two defense were going to win. So as Paul said, you and I have both gone for the 49ers. And that could potentially be from the offense side of things. The 49ers, I was talking to another 49ers fan yesterday saying, for a lot of the season, I was a bit like, what exactly is going on with the 49ers? Because every time you expected them to implode, to fall apart, when they lose their starting quarterback, when they're not sure what's going on here and there and all that, they were still winning games. They were still coming out of that week with a win. And you were just like, oh, well, maybe it's just a fluke, or maybe it's just a... But especially to be in the position they're in now, it's very much like, there's got to be something going on. It can't be a, same phrase again, Lady Luck Shining. I also agree with Paul. This could be the first genuine test of this version of the 49ers offense. So...
I think Micah Parsons is scary.
If that guy was barreling down on you, you'd be like,
have it. There you go.
The ball's right there, mate. You do what you need to. In fact, let me open the door. Come on.
And I think our defense, although it's ranked number one on third down, it's one of the worst, and that's where Tony Pollard comes in because he's so quick. So that is the worry. We're crap at third down, and Tony Pollard comes in and just runs rings around us. Difficult.
Yeah. Regardless, it will be a wonderful game and quite the fitting way to finish out the week. So, all that means is that Andy and Mark have basically picked the same teams. So, we'll need a tiebreaker of sorts. So, what I've suggested
fisticuffs
is that you both write down the total number of points scored across all 4 games.
Ooh.
So work out in your heads how many points you think will be scored in each game, tot them up, and give me a figure. And whoever ends up closest, if we need the tiebreaker, obviously whoever ends up closest to the mark will get the point. So we'll have a little think. So whilst they're totting those up, I'll just go back through the games. So it's the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs, the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills, and the Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, if the Bills and Chiefs do progress, I believe the game will take place at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I believe was the location that was selected as the neutral venue. So if it's a Chiefs-Bills AFC Championship game, it'll take place in an NFC stadium. Work that one out. Do you have figures, boys?
I do.
I do, yeah.
Okay, Andy, do you want to give us your figure first? We are going to get some large scoring games. So Andy's pick of 248 points.
For anybody who is listening, I used a calculator for this by basically looking at the games and going, that game's going to score, this is a total, and just doing that for all 4 games to get me a total point.
So that's an average of 62 points a game, I believe.
Yeah, I'm
if it happens, I think people will be very excited. So, Mark, what have you gone for?
So I've got some workings out on my sheet of paper with some.
I like it. Show you're working. We always like this.
I don't get any bonus points for that, though, do I?
Sadly, not.
210. I've gone for.
What's that? About 52? 53
points
for the game.
Points,
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I'll tell you something, folks. If it happens, either way, we're in for one hell of a divisional round weekend of the games. There is only one item left to go through, and it is week 20 of the side bet. So, just to clarify, Andy goes into week 20 on 49 points. I go into week 20 on 51 points. So technically, Andy can have the first pick, or put me into bat. But like I say, rather than doing A, B, B, A, we'll just do one pick each, and then whoever picked first gets to pick the third game. So it's up to you, Mr. Cook. Do you want to go first, or do you want to go second?
Yeah, I'm going to go first. I'm going to almost cheat this one by taking the Chiefs to beat the Jaguars.
No, you do shock.
Bearing in mind, as a half-brained, half-stolen concept, that part of me thought we'd get to week 3 and be like, this side bet thing's absolutely not worth doing. We could potentially end by going into the Super. If it goes a particular way, we could be going to the Super Bowl as a decider for the side bet.
Potentially. In that case, I will take what in theory should be the next most sensible pick. So I'll go for the Eagles.
That would have been my next pick. Now you've done it.
Which way is he going to go, ladies and gentlemen?
At this point in the season, and this point in the side bet predictions, I have to go with what I personally feel is a easier pick to make, which is the San Francisco 49ers to probably just, if it happens, beat the Dallas Cowboys.
Not going to lie, I believed that was the way he was going to dice that one. So I was fully expecting it. So, do I do what you discussed doing for a couple of weeks ago? Do I hedge my bets?
This is a very good question, because either way, you're getting points.
No, I'll stick with my convictions. I'll stick with the Bills.
Oh, he could have jinxed the lot.
I must admit, it's obviously sort of like pull back the curtain somewhat. Obviously, the book is just written out in pen by my good self. When I was doing that game earlier, I did Chiefs, Eagles, Cowboys, and just put a B in that game for a good hour. Because I was like, I really don't know which way I'm going to pick. But I did fall on the Bills in the end. So there you go. Andy's 2 teams for the side bet, obviously with there only being 4 games. He's taken the Chiefs over the Jags, the 49ers over the Cowboys. I've got the Eagles over the Giants, and the Bills over the Bengals. We will see what happens next week.
There we go. Fantastic stuff. Big thank you to Paul for running the book and being my co-host. A big thank you to another co-host from another podcast. Mark, when does the Formula 1 season start up again?
I believe this year, because they keep changing it, it's about March time, so we're
not too
a couple
long.
of weeks away from the launches of the cars, and then we'll have...
It'll be winter testing at the moment, won't it, surely?
I think February time, it's quite short now, winter testing, so it's like middle of Feb, end of Feb. They only have maybe 2 or 3 weeks now. But for listeners of the podcast, as I did lose my predictions round, I am doing the shoey this Saturday, unfortunately. So,
Tell me it's going to be Instagram Live.
Well, we're doing it at Bert's in Brands Burton, so I mean it could be.
Yeah, get the podcast
Picture
type.
on a shoey. Nice. Can't wait.
I'm genuinely going to be sick. Oh. And there we go. An amazing way to finish the episode, the podcast. Whatever you call it, we call it. Us talking about a sport that is not from this country, that we know probably that much about. Thank you to these 2 gentlemen for helping me take you lovely people through a sport, as I said, not from our country. We will return next week. There might be a guest. There might be more than one guest. There might be no guests. Who knows? We will be talking divisional round football and going into a very special weekend in a lot of ways. Mark, hopefully we can get you back on between now and the Super Bowl, which is not that far away, but a big thank you to you for joining us. Maybe you can bring some of your Straight to the Apex cohorts with you. I believe there's still one other NFL fan out there.
There is, yeah.
So we shall see if we can make that happen. And that's it. Next week we'll be back. We'll be talking more, in some ways less, NFL. That's it. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So there you go. What do you think to that? Big thank you to Mark for joining me and Paul. We always appreciate our guests. We shower them with love and the gift of reading out stats live on air. Big thank you to you for joining us. Hope you tune in for next week and the following weeks, the last few weeks of the season, taking us up to the wonderful Super Bowl. Before you go, if you haven't already, do consider clicking that subscribe button. You can also like, share, drop reviews. You can even check out our website. It's thecookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button so that you can get in touch with us. Tell us who you think is going to win the Super Bowl. That's it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
This has been another episode of CookieCast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.